This week on JEB and Flow, we are talking about how, obviously the seasons are changing. We are making our way into fall. Schedules change, the weather changes, all kinds of things change. But that does not mean that your good habits have to change. They don't need to fall apart. Recognize that there might be some extra temptations there, some extra impulses, some extra places where you might be able to kind of fall off, but you don't have to let that happen. So tune in. We've got some really great stuff to talk about. Can't wait to see you. Welcome back to JEB and Flow here on the Street Parking Podcast channel. This is episode 45 for the new era of JEB and Flow. So 5 more to get to 50, and then we'll get to 100, and then who knows? Anyways, that's pretty cool. Let's start with a couple deep breaths. Close your eyes if you can, sit up tall, take a deep breath in. Let it out slow. And again, big breath down into your belly. Back out. One more time. Breathe in, fill your belly. Expand your ribs. Lift your chest. Take another little sip of air at the top. And then really slowly let it out. And blink your eyes open. And here we are. Good to have you back. We are making our way into the autumn, the fall harvest. And I've been thinking about some things that are interesting. You know, we have gotten away from a very agrarian society, I guess you could say. Certainly there's tons and tons of agriculture, but we also are in a very modern era where we are not as affected, or at least we think we are not as affected by seasons as maybe we are. But there are some interesting biological things that happen with the seasons. For example, in the fall, we actually start to crave more sugar and richer foods. And the reason might be very obvious, but we are getting ready to survive the winter. So we start to crave these sweeter things. And what's interesting is that if you look at a lot of the fruits and the vegetables and the foods that are harvested in the fall, they generally have a higher sugar content. And that's because of the cooler temperatures. But for whatever reason, you know, we eat those foods in the fall. They have a higher sugar content. We then ideally pack on a few pounds so that we can survive the harsh winter when there may not be as much food. There's much more scarcity. So there's definitely a reason for that. And then there's less daylight, so we get less vitamin D, which can make us more tired, have less energy, perhaps even a little bit less motivation, which is why habits are so much more important than waiting until we get motivated. So the changing of the seasons can really have an impact on us, but it doesn't have to. And luckily, like I was saying, we live in this modern era where we don't have to worry about making it through the winter. And we have access to all different kinds of foods all year round. And you can take a vitamin D supplement to help with seasonal effectiveness. I don't know why that was so hard to say. So in some ways, it's almost like nature. I really don't mean this way, but it's almost like nature can work against you. we don't need to huddle up and stay inside and eat a bunch of really rich, calorie-dense, sweet foods, even though our bodies might be gently suggesting more often that we do that. Now, the downside, maybe, perhaps, of this modern era is we are blasted with information all the time. And unfortunately, one thing that is really effective in making people do stuff, purchase things, think things, or take actions is fear. We talked about that last week a lot. But it all comes down to fear. And in the media, social media, whatever other kind of media, they use fear because it's effective. You can't really fault them for that, but you can wise up to it and recognize it, and it affects you much less. I don't get into politics on here, and I never will, but I can state the obvious that we're going into an election year, right? And that's going to mess a lot of people's heads up. And whatever media you consume, that media is going to try to instill fear in you that if one 75-year-old white guy wins and the other 75-year-old white guy loses, that the whole country is just going to collapse into, whatever. And it's not true. It's not true. But there's a lot of money in making you think that. So we know that fear takes on many forms, and one of those forms is gluttony. So you tack that on to the changing seasons and the cravings for richer, sweeter foods and the less daylight and that kind of thing, and then you add in some fear. And if one of our kind of forms that fear takes for us is to eat, well, then we add that into the mix. So don't worry, if you're still with me, this is not all. I'm not just trying to pile on a bunch of dark, dismal stuff. But it is important to know, to recognize, to understand, and to be prepared for certain pitfalls that might be coming our way. Because perhaps you've spent this summer or this year developing some really good habits. Or maybe you want to start developing some more good habits. That's awesome. How can we develop those habits? How can we maintain the ones you've already been developing through these changing seasons, making our way into the back end of this year? The first thing is to just be aware of the change, to be okay with the change, and to think about, well, what is it that I need to make happen today? What needs to be true in order for these habits to take root or to continue to deepen their roots? Number one, and really this is probably the only thing that needs to be on the list, is consistency. We talk about it a lot, consistency. Being consistent with the things that you can control. So maybe your kids are going back to school. Maybe your kids are not going back to school and they're going to be at home more. Maybe you don't have kids, but the whole work situation in this country is very weird. Maybe your schedule is changing. Who knows? But think about what it is that you can control and think about what it is that needs to be consistent. And if you can start with those two things, really everything else is going to fall into place. So imagine this. What's better? I'll ask you this. 15 to 20 minutes of something, or 24 hours of nothing? The answer is obvious. 15 to 20 minutes of something is better than 24 hours of nothing. Consistency. So as you move into the fall, knowing that there's going to be some things that are probably going to try to take you off course a little bit. And when you see those things, say, not today. That is not going to be the thing that takes me off course today. I may not be able to control those things. I may not be able to control the things that are out there or that the media is trying to throw at me. I can control my use of media. I can control my fitness. I can control what I eat. That is a truth. That is 100% true. You can control your fitness. And you do that with consistency. So even though these seasons change, the good habits don't have to. And I really like to take the mindset of keeping it super simple, more than nothing, right? If you find that you have less energy, if you find that you're seasonally affected, personally, I take vitamin D every day, and I think it helps, especially since moving up. I started taking it when I moved up here to the Pacific Northwest because it's quite a bit less sunny during the wintertime than the previous places that I have lived. But if you can develop a habit of doing something for 15 to 20 minutes, maybe it's not even that. Maybe you start with 10 minutes. 10 minutes a day, where you do something that is deliberate and intentional for your physical well-being. And that's it. And you just practice that consistency. When it comes to what you eat, maybe you don't need I would never recommend a complete overhaul of anything. It's little bits at a time, right? How do you eat an elephant? You eat an elephant one bite at a time. You take one little bite at a time. So personally, I think the best place to start is veggies. Eat veggies with every meal. If you just keep a bunch of veggies chopped up, then there you go. All you got to do is throw them into the meal, or throw them into a bowl next to your meal and eat them with the meal. If you eat veggies every meal, you will notice a huge difference. Anyways, let's get to the action item, because that's basically what I've been saying this whole time anyways. But what I want you to do is get really, really clear and take some small action for this week. If you feel like you're somebody that struggles with getting thrown off course, and we know that the fall is when a lot of people do get thrown off course, then start with these tiny little actions. So what the action item is for this week is to take 3, maybe 5 minutes a day to do 3 things. Number 1, reflect on the good habits that you have cultivated over the summer, or think about the habits that you would like to develop right now. So just take a minute and reflect on that. Think about that. Just sit with it. Number 2, think about what must be true in order to experience the results that come from maintaining those good habits. What must be true? Now, this one is a little tricky, and the bulk of your 3 to 5 minutes will be in just asking that question. And it's okay if you don't get an answer right away, but if you do this every day, that answer will become clear. What must be true in order to experience the results that will come from maintaining these good habits? And usually that answer is going to come down to planning, being organized, consistency, and being aware of the pitfalls. But if you can prepare yourself, plan your meals, plan your workouts, plan your day, plan your time, organize it in a way that if it does get thrown off a little bit, you're going to be okay. But going into things, you're in a much better mindset. Number 3, Recognize that the only thing that must be true in order for you to fall out of the bad habits is a lack of acceptance of the things that are out of your control. So the only thing that must be true that will throw you off course is a lack of acceptance of the things that are out of your control. So remind yourself, that third step is really important. In that 3 to 5 minutes, remind yourself at the end, there are a lot of things that are out of my control. I accept that. I am going to focus on the things that I can control. Control your health, control your fitness, control your mindset. It's going to be an awesome fall. I'm looking forward to it. Tons of great things going to be happening. So anyways, thank you for tuning in. I love you. I'll see you next week.